I never saw the original message. It came as a forward threaded into an old chain labeled Family Updates, buried between outdated travel plans and photos from holidays no one remembers anymore. Rhodes Family Strategic Session, Internal Alignment. 18 names. I read through them slowly, unsure what I was looking for. Lauren Whitman's name appeared fourth from the top. She once told me through a champagne laugh that family meetings were more ego than substance. Yet, she'd found her seat. I hadn't. I read it again not for content, just confirmation. Still no Cassidy. The mug on my desk, chipped at the handle, had been my grandmother's. She once said, "Cracked things stay in families longer, because no one dares give them away." I held it by the unbroken side. I typed, "Is this intentional?" 3 dots blinked, then paused, then reappeared. "Cassidy, maybe it's best you don't come." Nothing more. I didn't reply. I closed my laptop softly, as though silence would make the message less deliberate. 2 weeks ago, over dinner, my father had gestured toward Chase and said, "We're entering a critical alignment phase. The next generation needs presence." His hand never turned toward me. I was seated at the same table, but outside the conversation. At that same dinner, my mother passed the salad without eye contact and said, "Let's try not to draw attention tonight, all right?" Her voice always carried better in private than in public. On my calendar, Thursday at 10 had once held a placeholder tentative, Rhodes alignment discussion. It was still there now, a block of sterile white, not updated, not rescheduled, just emptied out. I stared at the gap for a while. It reminded me of those moments in family photos when I'd step out of frame to take the picture, only to find later that no one remembered I wasn't in it. There was a bent paperclip near the base of my monitor. I twisted it straight, folded it once, then slipped it inside a drawer already full of other small, forgotten shapes. Things I kept not because they were useful, but because they reminded me someone once touched them. I didn't open the thread again. I didn't refresh the message. Some absences speak clearly without needing a second reading, and some invitations I've learned are not forgotten, just withheld on purpose. I used to think that patience would earn me space, that if I made myself useful but never loud, they'd carve out a place for me without being asked. When I was 25, I declined a CTO offer from a San Diego startup, something small but promising. Instead, I accepted a junior technical liaison role at Rhodes Industrial. "Start somewhere real," my father said, sliding the contract toward me like a gift wrapped in obligation. The office was a windowless annex near the shipping dock. My badge didn't open the main elevator. I kept a stack of engineering notebooks in my drawer, though no one asked for them. On holidays, I brought small wrapped things, lavender hand cream for my mother, engraved pens for the partners, even organic dog biscuits for Lauren's terrier. No one commented, but they disappeared one by one. Except the cream. That stayed sealed in the guest bathroom cabinet for 3 years. Once at a 4th of July picnic, Chase picked up my tablet and scrolled through a prototype I'd been building for hospital logistics. "It's cute," he said. "Little screens for little problems." I laughed too softly to sound real. "Maybe someday it'll grow up." He handed the tablet back with a smirk. "Or maybe you will." At last year's anniversary dinner, I printed the full-page feature from a medical tech journal, an article detailing the AI framework I had designed for regional clinics. I placed it on my father's plate before the salad came. He scanned the headline, set the paper aside. "That's sweet, Cassidy. But how about applying that brain to real manufacturing someday?" I folded the page in half during dessert. 2 crisp lines down the center. I didn't tear it. I just pressed it flat and slid it into my coat pocket like something half-spoken. There's a button on that coat, missing its thread. I never sewed it back. Some things fall loose to remind you they were never really fastened. They say, silence keeps peace. But I've learned that too much of it makes you invisible in plain sight. I thought if I waited long enough, someone would call my name. Turns out when you're too careful not to interrupt people, start speaking like you're already gone. I don't remember the gifts, but I remember the card. My 10th birthday. One envelope passed down the dinner table with all our names printed on the front. Inside, everyone had written something except mine. The space under my name was blank. My mother tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and said, "We were in a rush. Honey, you know how weekends are." I kept the card anyway, folded it neatly and slid it behind a drawer I rarely opened. Years later, I found it again, creased yellowing, still unsigned. At 17, I placed first in the state programming competition. I emailed the news. No reply. That weekend, the family hosted a backyard barbecue. Balloons, a congratulatory banner. Emily had made the honor roll in English. During dessert, someone asked if I'd be applying for engineering scholarships. My uncle cleared his throat. "Emily's thinking liberal arts. That's a better cultural fit for the family, don't you think?" No one disagreed. The first time my software was deployed statewide, I forwarded the press release to my father. He answered 6 days later beneath a forwarded memo. "You know the real impact comes from machines, not screens." I didn't reply. I archived the message without starring it. The dress I wore to my college graduation still hangs in the back of my closet. A button is missing. I never replaced it. That day, I walked the stage alone. Later, my mother mailed a photo album, blank pages interspersed with typed labels like Commencement Day, Proud Moment. None of the pages had actual pictures. Little things don't bleed, but they bruise. I started writing reminders in the margins of my notebooks, not about tasks, but about tone. Don't interrupt. Smile when Chase speaks. Say thank you, even when it stings. Eventually, the notes stopped being reminders. They became muscle memory. Last month, I reorganized my files. In the back of the cabinet beneath patent drafts and meeting transcripts, I found the printout from that medical tech article, the one I had once placed carefully in front of my father's plate. The edges had curled, the ink faded along the folds. I didn't throw it away. I slid it into a new folder, pressed flat beneath a sheet of archival paper, not because I needed to remember what they ignored, but because I wanted one thing in this house to stay intact, even if no one else would read it. I didn't notice my name was missing until I saw it crossed out. The email arrived mid-morning from legal services, no subject line, just a request to review. A document marked Beneficiary Realignment Final Draft. 2 pages, a line of polite explanation, and my name struck through in grey, as if it had been penciled in by mistake and later corrected. 3 properties. The Vermont cabin was the first on the list, the only one that mattered. The name beside it now read Chase Rhodes. Below that, Emily Rhodes. I read the sentence again. This adjustment reflects current family structure and active engagement in legacy planning. I dialed my mother. Her voice came through without hesitation. "Oh, darling, it's nothing. Just streamlining the estate. You've got so much going on already. We figured it'd be simpler." There was no pause after it. I placed the phone down without speaking. The edge of the printed page brushed my palm, still warm from the printer. I noticed the ink hadn't fully dried. One name bled slightly where my thumb had rested. Not mine. My mug left a faint ring on the corner of the paper. I wiped it once, then let the mark stay. The drawer beneath my desk holds a laminated diagram, an equity map built by my hand, every node cross-referenced, every line verified. 3 holding companies, 38%. Quiet, consistent patient accumulation. I slid the diagram onto the desk. My name filled every quadrant but one. I texted Rachel, "Are we ready to move?" Her response came quickly, "Yes, we've been ready." I leaned back staring at the page again. The deletion wasn't accidental. It had been formatted, accepted, agreed upon. There was no visible comment bubble, no edit suggestion. It wasn't an oversight. In the top drawer, I found an old label plate, Cassidy Roads engraved in brushed brass. I had ordered it myself years ago when I believed names were anchors. I turned it over. The adhesive had dulled. It no longer stuck to anything. I pinned the second page of the document to the corkboard above my desk. Not for strategy, not for reference. Sometimes silence looks like efficiency. Sometimes it signs itself. And sometimes the only name missing is the one that built everything. I always thought the last word would come through conversation. It didn't. I disabled the shared calendar first. One click. Then the Rhodes family email group unsubscribed, archived, forgotten. My name disappeared without any notification. No one reached out to ask why. At the firm, I removed myself from the minority shareholder list. The legal transfer was simple, clinical. Through Whitlow systems, I retained indirect control. Direct presence was no longer necessary. The receptionist at Rhodes Industrial asked if I'd be attending the next strategic review. I looked at her lanyard, frayed at the edge, name smudged from years of use. They've already filled the seats. No one followed up. In my old office, I packed the few things I'd left behind. A fountain pen that no longer wrote. A ceramic paperweight shaped like a fox. The plaque on the door still bore my name. I left it untouched. One Wednesday, I drove out to Vermont. The cabin sat exactly as I remembered, except the name on the deed no longer matched the girl who used to sweep pine needles off the porch. I didn't go inside. There's a spot on the front window frame where I carved Cass, summer 2002, with a penknife. The wood had weathered, but the mark remained. I placed my hand over it briefly. No one saw me. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't contest the transfer. Through silent channels and untraceable votes, I shifted the property back. The title reverted. The database updated. No press release. No conversation. Inside, I left a note on the kitchen counter, torn from a notepad with faded floral edges. Don't worry. I won't come back. This space is no longer mine. No name, no date. At a dinner the following week, my mother leaned over during dessert. "It's exhausting, Cassidy. This need to prove you're separate." My fork paused above the plate. "Maybe if you'd stayed long enough to learn the rules, you'd have had a real place here." I folded the napkin twice then, once more, until it fit perfectly in the space between my hands. She continued speaking, but I stopped listening after that. Some exits don't require doors. Some departures aren't followed by movement. Sometimes the most permanent goodbye is the one that doesn't ask to be noticed. I didn't leave a forwarding address. Nothing needed forwarding. The cabin wasn't listed in any record under my name, at least not directly. The purchase had gone through a holding account I'd created years ago for projects I didn't think anyone would understand. It had sat empty since my grandmother passed, dust settling on windows she used to polish with vinegar and crumpled newspaper. No one asked where I'd gone. The silence wasn't sharp. It settled slowly like dust in a room no longer walked through. I stopped checking the group chat. Messages kept coming. Pictures of dinners, new board members, plans for someone's wedding I wasn't expected to attend. I removed the SIM card not because I needed distance, just clarity. The early days blurred. I didn't measure them in tasks or goals, just in the shape they left behind. No meetings, no alarms. Just tea at noon-wiped countertops and long evenings spent sanding down the edge of the wooden countertop with a cloth that had once been a dish towel in my childhood kitchen. The desk had space for 3 things. I chose carefully: a laptop. I rarely opened a framed photo of my grandmother holding a paintbrush, and the only printout of the merger plan I had kept outside the office. The corner of the page had curled slightly from the weight of time. No one had asked me to explain it. No one had believed in the model, not until it became necessary. A week in, I took out a pen and wrote my name across the top of a blank notepad. Cassidy Eleanor Whitlow. The ink didn't skip. I traced it once, then set it aside. The paper absorbed it without resistance. Later, a package arrived. No return address, just a box wrapped in old tissue paper. Inside, a silk scarf I had once left at the family house. Folded, pressed, returned. A card slipped underneath read, "You left this behind." No signature. The handwriting looked like my mother's. I didn't reply. I folded the scarf into a drawer I no longer opened, often beneath receipts and drafts of things I hadn't decided to build yet. Sometimes what you take with you isn't something you chose. It's what no one thought you'd notice was missing. I could tell it wasn't about me the moment he used my full name. "We were wondering," Tom's voice came with practiced warmth, "if you'd like to stop by the family strategy meeting next week. The team thought it might be good optics." I didn't ask who the team was. I knew. The call ended with a drawn-out pause, the kind people leave when they expect you to fill in something generous. I let it go silent. The screen dimmed before I moved again. 3 days later, a text arrived from my mother. Short, punctuated like an invitation, but worded like a correction. "Darling, it might be nice if you showed up at the anniversary party. The governor is coming, and you know how much your presence helps our image." No mention of what had been removed, no acknowledgement of what had been rewritten. The card arrived the next morning, cream-colored, embossed impersonal. My name was spelled correctly this time. I held it up to the window. The light caught a faint indentation from an earlier draft beneath the printed surface. A different name had been typed first, then deleted. During an interview with a financial outlet, the reporter smiled as he adjusted his notes. "Will you be returning to represent Rhodes at the anniversary event this weekend?" I didn't blink. I wasn't invited the first time. I won't arrive the second. That night, an email arrived from Rachel. Subject line update. 1 line confirmed. 51. 2% secured through silent voting. You're in position. No attachments. Just a small green flag in the corner, the kind the system uses for tasks marked ready. I didn't write back. The invitation still sits on my desk. I haven't opened it. I don't need to read the menu or the dress code. I already know how the room will be arranged, which faces will turn toward which camera, and which stories will be told, like truths. No one has asked where I've been. No one has asked why I stayed away. They only noticed the empty chair when it started to matter who was watching. Some invitations arrive not to include you, but to control what your absence might mean. And I've learned not showing up can say more than any speech. I stopped expecting recognition the day I realized I no longer needed to explain what I was building. My mornings are quiet now. I make coffee without measuring. The cup doesn't match the saucer. I stopped trying to complete sets. The walks around the lake happen without destination. I don't track the distance. Sometimes I pause to watch a heron lift off from the shoreline. No announcement, no arc of drama. Just flight. The non-profit project came together slowly. Open source data systems for underfunded schools. Nothing polished. Just clean architecture, resilient logic, and email threads with teachers whose names I'll never see in articles. A 10th grader from Nebraska once sent a 3-line message. "Your system helped us keep the heating on this winter." I fixed the bug myself. I printed that email not to display, but to fold into the back of my notebook. The feature request from a financial magazine arrived on a Thursday. "We'd love your side of the story," Savannah wrote. "People should know what really happened." I replied with one line, "Let them keep their version. I'm not in it anymore." In my wallet, there used to be a photo from a family trip I can't fully recall. I replaced it with a torn scrap of paper in my grandmother's handwriting. Be good. Be quiet. But never be small. Last week, during a conference in DC, I passed my mother in the hallway. She paused, looked me over and said, "You look different." I nodded. "I am." She didn't ask where I'd been. She never does. The badge clipped to my blazer read, Whitlow. No title, no company. Just the name I chose when I stopped asking anyone else to say it. There's a folder on my desktop labeled Ongoing. It holds code I haven't pushed diagrams. No one's reviewed a long list of implementation notes. I revisit it every few days, not to edit, just to remember it's mine. I don't correct people anymore. Not when they misremember, not when they quote headlines I never gave, not when they assume I walked away because I had nothing left to build. They never saw me building. Now, they talk like I was never there. And I've learned something rare. There's freedom in not being the story, only the system that made it possible. I didn't open it right away. The envelope sat on the windowsill for 3 days, heavy enough to bend slightly at the corners. Thick cardstock, legal weight, with my name typed in bold across the front twice. Once as recipient, once as subject. The letter inside was from the estate attorney. Polite language, straight margins, a summary of the updated inheritance framework, and an invitation to confirm my alignment with the family's unified direction. A signature line waited at the bottom, quiet and expectant. I folded it back into the envelope and slid it under a stack of newsletters I hadn't read. The name printed in the header was the same name I had erased from every other surface of my life. On the 4th day, I wrote a single sentence by hand. I decline the role. I am not part of this structure. Please update your documents. No justification, no commentary. I printed a second line at the bottom in block letters. Please remove Cassidy Roads, from family line reference. At the post office, I handed it over without ceremony. The clerk didn't ask what it contained. He didn't need to. Later that afternoon, I updated the last of the records. Bank accounts, deeds, systems I once co-authored but no longer claimed. My name became Cassidy Eleanor Whitlow, not a replacement, just a return to something that never belonged to them in the first place. A week after the documentations were processed, I checked the Rhodes Industrial website out of habit. Under Founding Family, my name had been removed. The list no longer looked wrong, just shorter. I opened the Whitlow Systems homepage. At the bottom corner of the landing page, past the press kits and the mission statements, a single line remained in small type, founded by C.E. Whitlow, in quiet pursuit of what others didn't believe was possible. No photo, no link, just presence. At dinner, once my father leaned back in his chair and said, "Legacy is about continuity, not personality." I remember my fork hovering just above the plate. He wasn't wrong, but what no one taught him was that removal can also be continuity when silence becomes the line that holds everything in place. And I've come to believe there is no structure more complete than the one you walk away from. And don't return to clarify. I moved the kettle to the far corner of the counter, not because it made more sense, just because no one had asked me to. It sat there beneath the window, humming low each morning. The steam curled into the air without instruction. On the windowsill, a small stone. I picked up the first day I came here, still flecked with the same reddish dirt. A wooden clothespin that once held up my grandmother's apron. A folded card with my name in ink. Cassidy, Eleanor Whitlow. The corner was creased. I liked it that way. I drank from a chipped mug, the one she gave me when I was too young to know why people saved things. The crack ran along the side like a quiet seam, holding everything together without promise. I washed it carefully each night, then set it back in its place. There were letters I didn't answer. Most wanted confirmation presence agreement. Some were dressed in apology, sealed in expensive envelopes. One was handwritten, deliberate. I folded it once and slipped it into a book with no title shelved between things I don't reach for often. I returned to the city once, sat across the street from a hotel I used to enter through the service door because the front felt too loud. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I still read the quarterly updates, watched graphs curve and revenues shift. I kept my stake, not for influence, just for memory. My notes filled a plain notebook, half ideas, half code, no audience. When people asked what I did now, I found a phrase that fit. I tend to quiet things. No one ever asked what that meant. There was a letter I once wrote, addressed to no one. It explained why I changed my name, why I left, why I never replied. I never sent it. It rests beneath a stack of winter scarves unread. I think that's the point. My coat has a small embroidery inside the collar. Whitlow stitched in thread, soft enough to miss. It touches my skin when I walk like a name not shouted but carried. Some nights I sit out back with the chipped mug in hand. The steam rises slowly. No one watches. Nothing waits. I've come to believe that wholeness doesn't need to be witnessed. Some lives are meant to be quiet, not hidden. Just whole,